for those mums who are going to be bottle feeding, I'm going to suggest a particular bottle as well as going to look at some dummies. Sometimes it might also be good if you're going to choose to breastfeed that you have a bottle on standby just in case. If you never get to use it, that's absolutely fine. But I also know I've had situations, I've had to send a dad out to the shop to go and buy a bottle because we need something to feed this baby with. Now, I'm going to tell you what my preferred bottle is and we'll give you reasons why I prefer this bottle. As I've mentioned again before in previous presentations, nobody pays me to advertise their product. I don't get any reimbursement from any company to promote their product. I am looking for the things that I've found that have been useful and therefore being able to pass that information on to you. So now when we look at my preferred bottle, this is what I normally suggest for a newborn baby, and there's a couple of reasons why. Make sure that it is the wide neck pigeon bottle. On the box, it will actually say Soft Touch Peristaltic Plus. Peristaltic just means that this is the movement that the baby's tongue makes, a peristaltic or wave-like motion. Now, when we're looking at this particular bottle, you will notice that the ring around here is white. This particular one means that the bottle itself is BPA-free plastic. If it's got a yellow ring around it, that means that the bottle is what we call hospital-grade plastic. And quite frankly, I don't think we need hospital-grade plastic to feed babies. The one that has the green ring around the top here is a glass bottle. And as far as I'm concerned, glass is very heavy and drops and breaks. So really the one with the white ring is quite adequate. If you look at the bottle, the size of it is a 160 ml bottle. So this means that it is labeled 0+ months. And on the top of the box, there's an SS on the top here, which means it's a super slow. So therefore, when you're looking for this bottle in these shops, these are the things that you're going to be looking for. Now, what are the reasons why I prefer this bottle? First of all, the shape of the actual teat itself. It's got a gradual slant towards the base and it's a wide neck. In other words, your baby sits comfortably on the actual teat itself. The baby's mouth and lips can flare out and it fills the corners of the mouth really well. The front of the teat is very stretchy, so therefore it stretches like your nipple would inside the baby's mouth. And we also know that the SS means a super slow. In other words, this is the slowest flow that I can currently find on the Australian market. I've bought bottles from all over the world and I keep coming back to this bottle because the babies sit comfortably on it and the flow is slow enough so that the babies don't gulp their milk down. The one thing with these bottles is just don't tighten the lid too tight because the air doesn't return properly into the bottle if you tighten it on too tight. But this is going to be my preferred suggestion for a bottle if you're going to use it. If you're bottle feeding, you might need about between 4 and 6 bottles. 4 bottles if you're going to sterilize twice a day, and that can be done in the morning and the evening, which is quite comfortably you can get by with 4 bottles. If you're going to be formula feeding, you do need to have some formula holders because you don't want to be carting the whole tin of formula around with you. And again, I prefer, and again, this one is made by pigeons. So you've got little containers that sit on top of each other. You just take the lid off and you put the certain amount of powder that you put in there. So let's say your baby's drinking a certain amount of formula. You look on the tin, this is how much water I need to take with me, and this is how many scoops I need to put into these things. This one is, for example, is made by Avent and it's got little divides on the inside of it. But I often find when you turn it upside down, end up with the powder from one section just slipping into the powder from the other section, and therefore we don't quite get the same mix. So I do prefer the ones that sit on top of each other. And then you do need some previously boiled water to take with you and a way in which that you can warm the bottle if, for example, it's winter and your baby's drinking warmed bottles. So therefore having a flask that your bottle can fit into with some hot water in it can help you. But then, of course, there is this wonderful new flask on the market, which is called a mister. And this particular flask can keep water warm at the ideal temperature for up to 12 hours. It's got a little lid on it. It's got a light on it that tells you that the water is at the correct temperature for your baby to be. It tells you that this is the correct temperature for the water to be kept to mix formula in. And this can be a bit of a game changer. It keeps 750 ml of water warm, and it's roughly, the size of a normal drink bottle. So this can comfortably fit into a nappy bag as well. Yes, it's pricey. It's $100 for this, but I think it can be a bit of a game changer if you're formula feeding and you're going to be using this for a long time. Now let's talk a little bit about dummies. Dummies come again in different shapes and sizes and all sorts of things. And one of them that I do prefer is the Tommy Tippy Ultra Light. I think the ultralight can sometimes be a bit difficult to find, but then any Tommy Tippy dummy I find is a nice shape in the front and can really be held in the baby's mouth quite nicely. We've also got the Jolly Pop dummies, which can be used for smaller babies. And then the Bibs dummy. This has become the latest fashion. I don't know what's so particular about it. Yes, it's got a cherry shape on the front of it, but really you can find inexpensive dummies that can be the same shape as well. And of course, there's always been the orthodontic Nuck dummy that's been around. I don't really know if the orthodontic part of it is just, something that has to happen. But quite frankly, I'm not really that partial to what dummy your baby takes. Whatever the baby prefers is actually the dummy that is right for the baby. Have a look around and see which dummy suits your baby. Some babies just refuse to take a dummy, and some babies will find their thumb, and therefore that is what goes into their mouth. Is how do you give a baby a dummy? I'm going to just show you a brief video and go through the process of how to give the baby a dummy. Because if you just put a dummy straight into the baby's mouth, often they will gag on the dummy, and then you think, oh, the baby won't take the dummy. But in actual fact, what you need to do is make them open their mouth and then just rub the dummy just behind where the front teeth will come out. And if you rub it around and allow the baby then to suck on it and draw it into their mouth, that is the way to give a baby a dummy. So you take the dummy, you hold it, you push it up against the palate, you rub it around a little bit. When the baby starts sucking, you let them suck it into their mouth, and that can help them to take the dummy. So don't be forceful and put a dummy fully into the baby's mouth because they're just going to gag on it. Sometimes they need to feel it before they can suck it back into their mouth properly. So really, we must make sure that dummies get used appropriately. And what I mean by appropriately is they're used just to settle a baby, possibly to sleep, or in between feeds if the baby just is a little bit niggly but doesn't really want to breastfeed or a bottle feed. Limit the use of the dummy when the baby is awake, because especially as they get older, we want them to experiment with mouthing. We want them to experiment with blowing bubbles and moving their tongue around and eventually making noises and starting to talk. Because if you have a toddler that has like dummies in their mouth and a dummy in the hand and everywhere, we find that this is very inappropriate, especially when it comes to speech. So we want to make sure that that dummy is not doing anything that can disrupt speech. But we also know that it can disrupt sleep, because if the baby gets so used to sleeping with it in their mouth and it pops out, the baby might wake up and want the dummy to go back into their mouth again. But so it can be a bit of a sort of, rod for your own back, but sometimes some babies just need the sucking comfort in order to help them to go to sleep. But we must make sure that it doesn't mask hunger. If your baby is constantly wanting to feed and is not gaining weight properly, then we need to look at, is the feeding correct? So that's why when you look at my Newborn Essentials course, I go through exactly how to know that your baby's getting enough during that feeding time as well. Some of the other useful things to have if you are using dummies or bottles is to make sure that you've got a way of cleaning them. In other words, you're going to need a bottle brush to be able to brush a bottle out on the inside with warm soapy water, so you take the milk residue out. You're also going to need something to sterilize them. And if you're not sure that you're going to be bottle feeding and you just need to make sure that you've got something to sterilize in, these quick clean bags that are made by lots of companies, you can find them at Baby Bunting. They're just sterilizing bags that you can put just one bottle into and be able to sterilize them. Or if you're traveling around, they really are useful as well. But if you are bottle feeding and you know that you're going to be doing lots of sterilization, then you do need either a microwave sterilizer, or you can get sterilizers that can stand on the counter. Again, I don't make recommendations with brands, but if you are buying a specific bottle, you don't have to buy the sterilizer that comes with another bottle that you're just not going to use. Then make sure that you get a sterilizer that just doesn't have bottles that come with it as well. As I say, microwave use, you put water in the bottom of the container, and when you put it in the microwave, that cooks the water, creates steam, and that's what sterilizes the bottles. And then if they're sterilized and they're still wet, you might want one of these little goodies that you can put little bits and pieces on so that they can just air dry before you put it all back together again. So those are some useful added things that you might want to purchase if you are going to use bottles and dummies. So I hope that this has helped you to know which bottles and which dummies to look for your baby.